My name is Alissa, and I thought I understood betrayal. I thought I had seen enough heartbreak in movies and books to be prepared for it. But nothing in my life had trained me for the moment when the two people I trusted most turned my world into a performance, with me cast as the fool. Started with a photo. Not just any photo. An ordinary image that became extraordinary the second I realized what I was staring at. Her face. His arm. A background I knew too well. And the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. But let me go back. Because if I just drop you into that moment, you might not understand the depth of the knife. You need to know the setup, the illusion, the lies that built the stage for this kind of devastation. You need to know how carefully they played me, how confidently they laughed when my back was turned. And most of all, you need to understand how I took their betrayal and turned it into a spectacle they will never escape. Brandon and I had been together for 6 years. 6 years of building a life, of whispered promises about forever, of me carrying the weight of us when things got difficult. He had a way of charming people, of making them believe he was devoted, loyal, unshakable. I believed it too. I wanted to believe. And then there was Melissa, my so-called best friend. We met in college and she was the kind of woman who filled every room with noise and laughter. She knew my secrets, my fears, even my passwords. She was the one I called at midnight when my parents divorced, the one who stood beside me when Brandon first asked me to move in. She was supposed to be my sister and everything but blood. The three of us had history. Trips, birthdays, long weekends where wine spilled, and laughter carried us into the early hours. People used to joke that we were like a little family. I smiled when they said it. How naive I was. Because families do not plan in the shadows. Families do not smile to your face and then take what is yours when you are not looking. Families do not let you stand in the kitchen, pouring drinks for them, while their hands brush under the table. I should have seen it. That is what haunts me most. The little signs, the moments that passed like whispers I ignored. Melissa's sudden insistence on coming over, always at times when Brandon was home. The way she shifted conversations when I walked into the room. Brandon's new excuses, his claim that he was working late more often, though his phone always seemed to die at the most convenient times. But in the beginning I swallowed it all. Because when you love someone, you give them your trust like an offering. And when you call someone your best friend, you believe they will protect your heart like it was their own. I could not imagine they would shatter it together. Until that night. I was scrolling mindlessly, half asleep, with the glow of my phone lighting up the bedroom. Brandon had told me he was at a client dinner. Melissa had texted earlier that she was exhausted and going straight to bed. Two simple lies stacked neatly like cards in a fragile house. And then the photo appeared. It was posted by someone else, one of Melissa's acquaintances. A group shot at a rooftop bar downtown. Nothing unusual. People smiling, glasses raised, lights twinkling in the city sky. But tucked in the corner of that image was the truth. Brandon, his arm wrapped around Melissa's waist. Melissa, her face tilted toward him with a smile I knew too well. And his eyes, God, his eyes. The eyes that once searched for me in crowded rooms were locked on her. In that second the world went quiet. My breath stopped. My pulse hammered in my ears like a warning bell. I stared and stared, hoping the pixels would rearrange themselves into something innocent. But they did not. It was them. Together. Out in the open. So confident, so sure I would never find out. I did not scream. I did not cry. Not then. Instead, I felt something colder. Sharper. A clarity I had never known filled me, like ice carving its way through my veins. Because if this was the game they wanted to play, then I would not walk away as the victim. No. I would write the ending myself. And trust me, when I was finished, neither of them would forget who I really was. The photo never left my mind. It burned behind my eyes when I tried to sleep. It followed me into the shower, into work, into every quiet moment when I thought I might finally breathe. I had proof of something ugly, and yet it was not enough to destroy them. Not yet. Because they could say it was nothing. They could claim it was a trick of the angle, a casual arm around a friend. People are skilled at excuses when they are caught. And Brandon especially had the gift of twisting words until lies sounded like truths. I needed more. The morning after I saw the photo, Brandon came home whistling. Whistling. He kissed my forehead as if nothing had happened, as if he had not been clutching another woman in the dark city sky. He smelled of cologne and whiskey, his tie loosened, his phone tucked firmly in his pocket like it was a weapon he would never let me touch. "How was the client dinner?" I asked, my voice steady. He smiled, eyes warm. "Long, boring. You know how those are." Melissa texted me an hour later. "Morning, bestie. Let's grab brunch soon, I miss you." The words tasted like poison. It was then that the pit in my stomach hardened into steel. The photo was not an illusion. It was a thread. And if I pulled at it, I knew the whole rotten tapestry of their affair would unravel. That night I tried something small. When Brandon went to take a shower, he left his phone on the nightstand. For years I had never touched it. Trust had been my religion. But now? Trust was dead. My hand shook as I picked it up. The lock screen glared at me, mocking. 6 digits between me and the truth. I tried our anniversary. No luck. I tried my birthday. Nothing. I tried Melissa's birthday, God help me. Wrong again. My chest tightened. He had hidden the code. Hidden it from me but shared it with someone else. I could feel it. And when he came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, I slid the phone back into place, forcing a smile. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine," I whispered. But I was not fine. I was a volcano under glass. Over the next week I watched. Every late-night meeting. Every sudden text he would tilt away from me to answer. Every excuse Melissa gave about being too busy to see me, though her Instagram told a different story. Cocktails, rooftops, little glimpses of a man's hand beside her. They thought I was blind. They thought I was weak. But each lie they fed me only sharpened the knife I was slowly, carefully forging. The breaking point came on a Friday evening. Brandon had promised we would finally have dinner together, just the two of us. I dressed up, cooked his favorite meal, lit candles. Hours passed. No Brandon. When he finally walked in, close to midnight, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes glazed with alcohol, he mumbled something about a late meeting again. And then his phone buzzed. It was Melissa. Her name lit up the screen like a spotlight. I stared at it. He froze. For a second the mask slipped, and I saw panic flicker in his eyes. Then he reached for the phone too quickly, too defensively. "Work," he muttered. I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that fills a room, but the hollow, dangerous kind. "Work calls you bestie now?" I asked softly. His face hardened. He did not answer. He did not need to. That was the moment. The incident that shattered any hope of denial. The betrayal was no longer hidden in photos or whispered suspicions. It stood in my living room, buzzing from his phone, wearing Melissa's name like a scarlet brand. I did not scream. I did not beg. I simply looked at him, at the man who had once sworn he could never hurt me, and I felt something inside me click into place. This was war. And I was done playing fair. I knew I could not run into battle without armor. Rage alone would not save me. If I accused Brandon or Melissa without evidence, they would twist it, turn it back on me, call me insecure, jealous, unstable. They would gaslight me until even I questioned what I saw. So I made a choice. I would collect proof, quietly, carefully, ruthlessly. The first step was social media. Melissa had always been reckless online. She lived for validation, for comments praising her outfits, her nights out, her perfect life. She loved being adored by strangers, and that vanity became my opening. I scrolled through her feed at night, zooming in on photos most people would pass without thought. There, 2 glasses on a table, but she only claimed she was out for a girls' night. Another post, her smile glowing under string lights, and if you looked closely, the reflection of Brandon's watch shimmered in the wine glass she held. Piece by piece the puzzle took shape. But screenshots alone would not hold in court, or in the court of public opinion. I needed more. I needed timestamps, receipts, undeniable overlaps. So I became an investigator in my own home. When Brandon left his suits at the dry cleaner, I checked the slips. The dates did not match his work dinners. When he left crumpled receipts in his pockets, I smoothed them out. 2 entrees, 2 cocktails, late-night charges at restaurants across town. And when his phone buzzed at ungodly hours, I pretended to sleep but memorized every number, every fragment of conversation that slipped out under his breath. One night I followed him. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I trailed his car through the rain, headlights glistening on slick pavement. He drove not to an office, not to a client dinner, but to the very rooftop bar where Melissa had once posted that cursed photo. I parked across the street, watching him step out, straighten his tie, and check his reflection in the car window. He walked inside with the eagerness of a man headed to something, or someone, he could not resist. An hour later Melissa appeared. My best friend. My supposed sister in everything but blood. She wore the red dress she had once borrowed from my closet, the one I had worn to celebrate my anniversary with Brandon. My chest burned as I watched her hug him, linger, laugh like I had never existed. I took photos. Dozens of them. Their hands brushing. Their bodies too close. The stolen looks when they thought no one saw. Proof carved in pixels and timestamps. But still I wanted more. Something undeniable. So I set a trap. At home I placed a small recording device beneath the couch cushions, right where Brandon always slumped after his nights out. I told myself I would delete it if nothing happened, that I was not crossing a line. But deep down I knew he would slip. People always do when they grow comfortable in their lies. And he did. One night, while he thought I was asleep, he called Melissa. His voice, low, drunken, careless, spilled everything. He missed her. He wanted her. He was tired of pretending. I listened to that recording with shaking hands, tears blurring my vision. Not because I doubted anymore, but because I finally had him. His own voice would destroy him. By the end of that week, my folder was full: screenshots, receipts, recordings, photos. Enough to bury both Brandon and Melissa under the weight of their own betrayal. But gathering evidence was only half the battle. Because evidence, no matter how strong, is useless without a stage. And I was already building one. The plan was forming in my mind: where, when, how. A reveal so sharp, so public, so undeniable that neither Brandon nor Melissa would ever recover from it. I shut the folder on my laptop one last time. My heart steady now, my rage sharpened into focus. This was no longer about jealousy. This was no longer about heartbreak. This was justice. And when the curtain finally rose, they would both be center stage, stripped of every mask, with nowhere to hide. Evidence alone sat heavy in my chest. I could stare at it for hours, but what good was proof without allies? If I faced Brandon and Melissa alone, they would twist every fact, paint me as bitter, jealous, unhinged. No, I needed people beside me. People who would hold me steady when the storm broke. The first ally came easily: my sister Claire. Claire had always sensed something off about Melissa. She once told me, "That girl watches Brandon a little too closely. Like she's memorizing his laugh, not yours." I had brushed it off, desperate to believe in loyalty. But now, with my folder of proof trembling in my hands, I finally confessed. At first, Claire tried to stay calm. She asked questions, measured, controlled. But when I showed her the photos, Melissa in the red dress, Brandon leaning close, her composure shattered. She slammed her hand against the table so hard the glasses rattled. "They think they can do this to you? To us? Then let's make them regret every second." Her fire lit mine. Next, I reached out to someone I had once avoided. A lawyer named Mr. Harris, who had handled a small contract for me years ago. I booked a quiet appointment, sitting across from him in his polished office while my hand shook around the manila folder. When he flipped through the evidence, his brows rose. "You have more than most people bring to court after years of litigation," he said slowly. "If you want to file for divorce, Alissa, you'll walk away with more than half. And if you want to stage something, as you hinted, I would advise timing it carefully." Stage something. The words echoed inside me like a starting bell. I told him I wanted a reveal. Something undeniable, but within the law. He leaned back, studying me, and then nodded. "If you're asking for strategy, I can help. Just remember, public humiliation carries weight. Are you prepared for that?" Prepared? I had been preparing every sleepless night since betrayal took root. But allies were not only legal. I needed emotional anchors too. That's when I turned to Daniel, my oldest friend from college. He had seen me through heartbreaks before, but nothing like this. When I whispered the truth, he didn't laugh, didn't doubt. He simply wrapped me in silence, the kind that says I'm here. When I told him my plan, he did not flinch. "If you want someone at your side when it happens," he said, "I'll be there." Piece by piece, my circle solidified. Claire for blood. Mr. Harris for law. Daniel for heart. Meanwhile, I studied Brandon and Melissa closer. Their arrogance grew bolder. Brandon came home late without excuses. Melissa still texted me as if nothing was wrong, as if she could play both sides forever. That hypocrisy would be her undoing. I started planning the stage. Not a courtroom, not a rooftop bar. No, this deserved something grander. Something intimate, yet undeniable. Our anniversary dinner was coming. Brandon had suggested a small gathering, claiming he wanted to celebrate our life together. I nearly laughed in his face. Instead, I smiled sweetly, pretending nothing was wrong. Yes, I agreed. Invite the family. Invite the friends. Let everyone come. He thought he was setting up a charade of devotion. He had no idea he was building my stage. Every night I rehearsed in my head how the room would fall silent, how Melissa's face would collapse when her lies spilled into the open, how Brandon's mask would crack once his voice recordings echoed across the walls. This was not just revenge anymore. This was theater. I was the playwright, the director, the star. And the finale would be brutal. The folder of evidence, once hidden under my bed, now traveled with me everywhere. On encrypted drives and backups Daniel kept safe. Melissa would not escape. Brandon would not escape. Not this time. The dinner approached. The invitations went out. The stage was set. But even as I prepared, unease lingered. Betrayers are slippery. They improvise. And deep inside I knew, when the night arrived, something would test me. Something would try to unravel the perfect script I had written. I promised myself one thing. I would not break. Because I was no longer Alissa, the wife in the background. I was Alissa, the woman who would turn betrayal into a spectacle. And soon everyone would watch. When I closed my eyes at night, I no longer saw Brandon's betrayal. I saw my stage. My mind became a director's booth, replaying every angle, every pause, every silence that would crush them. I began with the basics. What do I want people to see? What do I want them to hear? This was not just a matter of telling my family and friends they betrayed me. Words alone could be twisted. Brandon had charisma, Melissa had practiced charm. They could spin stories, paint me as hysterical, jealous, unstable. So I needed something stronger. Evidence could speak louder than any trembling voice. I started cataloging everything I had collected. The photographs of Brandon and Melissa at the beach house. The late-night text threads Melissa accidentally sent to me instead of him. The receipts from restaurants and hotels that Brandon never mentioned. The call recordings of Brandon's excuses, stitched together like the lullabies of a liar. One folder became 5. 5 became 10. Soon my home office looked less like a sanctuary and more like a war room. Claire helped me organize. She had a sharp mind, sharper than I ever gave her credit for. Keep it visual, she advised. People believe their eyes before they believe their ears. Show them Alissa. Make them watch. So I bought a projector. Not a small one, but the kind that could throw light across an entire wall. I tested it late at night, projecting the photos until Melissa's smirk glared back at me from 6 feet tall. Felt like power. Daniel helped too. He built a simple slideshow, discreet and devastating. No dramatic transitions, no sound effects. Just raw evidence presented one after the other like hammer blows. He looked at me as we tested it and whispered, "When this plays, no one will be able to deny you." But I wanted more than denial. I wanted silence. That sharp, suffocating silence when people realize the truth is undeniable. The dinner was my canvas. Brandon had already reserved the private room at our favorite restaurant. He thought it was romantic, symbolic. I thought it was poetic. The very place he used to celebrate me would be the ground where his lies crumbled. I called the restaurant secretly and paid extra to make sure the room's audio system and projector would be mine to control. They didn't ask questions, they saw money. But even money couldn't guarantee control. That was the hardest part to swallow, the risk. What if Melissa didn't show up? What if Brandon caught a whiff of my plan? What if the projector failed? Or the slideshow froze mid-image? That's when Mr. Harris, the lawyer, reminded me. Always build redundancies. Evidence should not rely on one device, one moment. So I prepared backups. I printed hard copies of the photos and receipts. I put the recordings on 2 different USB drives. I kept one set in my purse, another set hidden with Claire. If Brandon tried to deny, I would be ready. If Melissa tried to flee, I would follow. But the counterplan was more than logistics, it was psychological warfare. I wanted Brandon to feel the anticipation twist into dread. I wanted Melissa to think she could control the narrative, only to have it ripped from her. So I rehearsed my role. In the mirror I practiced my face. Calm, steady, unshaken. No tears, no raised voice. I wanted them to see not a victim but a conductor. Daniel tested me, playing devil's advocate, pretending to be Brandon. You're just jealous, Alissa. Melissa's been nothing but a friend. I stared at him coldly and in a level tone replied, then why is her lipstick on your shirt in 3 different photos? I rehearsed until the words came without hesitation. Until the thought of facing Brandon's smug denial no longer made my hands tremble. The night of the dinner grew closer. Invitations were confirmed. Family members were excited, unaware. Melissa texted me her fake cheerfulness, asking what she should wear. I almost laughed. Wear something you'll remember. I typed back. She sent me a heart emoji. Every detail tightened into place. Every ally knew their role. Claire would sit close, ready to steady me. Daniel would handle the projector. Mr. Harris would be on call in case things escalated legally. But the most important role was mine. I was not just exposing them, I was reclaiming myself. This was not jealousy. This was justice. And when the lights dimmed and the first photo appeared, the story of their betrayal would no longer belong to them. It would belong to me. The plan was finished. Now all I had to do was wait. And in that waiting I discovered something terrifying. I was not afraid anymore. Because revenge had given me strength. The day of the dinner dawned heavy, as if the sky itself felt the weight of what was coming. I woke up before sunrise, my chest tight with the pressure of it all. This was no longer a plan in theory. Tonight, every card would be turned over. I forced myself into a routine to keep my nerves at bay. Coffee. A walk. A shower. But my reflection betrayed me. My hands trembled as I pinned up my hair. My eyes were sharp, but I could see the storm behind them. Stay calm, I whispered to my own reflection. This is not about rage. This is about truth. By noon, everything was in motion. Daniel confirmed that the projector was set. Claire called to remind me she had the backup folder in her bag. Mr. Harris checked in to say he would be on standby if Brandon tried to twist things legally. Everything was perfect. Until it wasn't. At 2 o'clock, I received a text that nearly knocked the air out of me. It was from Melissa. Hey love, I don't think I can make dinner tonight. Feeling under the weather. Rain check. For a moment the room spun. My mind screamed. She knew. Somehow she knew. I paced, clutching my phone so tightly my knuckles went white. If she didn't come, the plan would unravel. Brandon could deny, gaslight, and spin. Without her there, I would look like a woman staging a witch hunt. I called Claire immediately. She's backing out. I hissed, my voice cracking. Melissa just texted, she's not coming. Claire's tone was steel. Then we make her come. Don't panic. Think. I sat down hard, gripping the edge of the table. Melissa wasn't sick, she was scared. That meant Brandon must have tipped her off. Or maybe she'd noticed my silence lately. Either way, she was trying to escape. I typed back slowly, carefully. Oh no. Everyone will miss you. Brandon already told them you were coming. At least stop by for a drink. It wouldn't feel the same without you. I stared at the screen until the dots appeared. Melissa replied. Maybe. I'll see how I feel later. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. My heart pounded. The pivot had begun. I called Daniel next. If she doesn't come, we pivot. We'll run the slideshow anyway, but we'll tailor it. Instead of exposing both, we'll focus on Brandon first. If Melissa walks in mid-scene, even better. But we need to be flexible. He hesitated. Alissa, are you ready for that? Because if she stays away, it's his word against yours, even with the photos. They'll say you're misinterpreting. I'll make them see, I said. With or without her. As the hours crawled forward, another complication emerged. The restaurant manager called. Ma'am, just a reminder that the projector you requested. We had some trouble with the HDMI ports earlier. We'll have a technician on site, but there could be a delay. A delay? My pulse spiked. Timing was everything. If the slideshow stuttered, if there was even a moment of technical failure, the tension could break. Brandon could step in, spin lies, make me look unstable. I closed my eyes and steadied myself. Have it fixed before 7, I told the manager. I don't care what it takes. Just make sure it works. By 5 o'clock I was dressed. A black dress, not flashy but commanding. My necklace rested against my collarbone like armor. I slid the backup USB drive into my clutch, checked the photos twice, rehearsed my lines once more. Claire met me at the door. You're shaking, she whispered. I know, I admitted. But so is the ground under their feet. We arrived at the restaurant early. Daniel was already there, testing the projector. The room was elegant, white linen, tall candles, crystal glasses. A room meant for celebration, not confrontation. But tonight it would hold a trial. At 6:45, Brandon walked in with Melissa on his arm. My stomach flipped. She had come. She was radiant in a red dress, her laugh echoing too loudly, her hand clinging to his like a badge of victory. She spotted me and waved as if nothing had happened, her smile syrupy sweet. Glad you made it, I said coolly. Brandon kissed my cheek, oblivious, confident. This night will be unforgettable, he whispered. I almost smiled. He had no idea how right he was. But then, as the guests began to arrive, the restaurant manager hurried over. His face was pale. Ma'am, we've lost the connection. The projector is down again. I'm working on it, but it may take time. My blood ran cold. This was it, the complication I dreaded. Without the slideshow, I had no visual proof. Without visual proof, Brandon could gaslight me, Melissa could perform innocence, and the room could turn against me. Claire gripped my hand under the table. We'll fix it, she whispered. Stay calm. But I could feel the room filling, the conversations buzzing, the anticipation mounting. Every second the projector remained dark was a second closer to disaster. This was the pivot point. Either I would collapse under the weight of the failure, or I would find another way to strike. I inhaled deeply, straightened my back, and forced a steady smile. The battle had begun, even before the lights dimmed. The restaurant shimmered with golden light. Candles flickered against polished glasses. Laughter rose and fell like background music. On the surface it looked like a night of joy. But underneath the air was thick with secrets about to burst. The projector remained dark. I could feel the weight of its silence pressing down on me. Every second another chance for my plan to collapse. Brandon was thriving in that silence. He leaned across the table, whispering sweet nothings to Melissa as if I were invisible. Every time their fingers brushed, my stomach turned, but I kept my face neutral. Relax, Alissa, he said finally, flashing me a smug smile. You look like you've seen a ghost. No, I said evenly. I just see the truth more clearly than most. Melissa giggled, tilting her head against his shoulder. My jaw clenched, but Claire squeezed my hand under the table, grounding me. At exactly 7:30, the restaurant manager approached, panic in his eyes. Ma'am, we are still working on the projector. I am so sorry. I inhaled slowly, the decision crystallizing in my mind. Technology might fail me, but my words would not. I rose from my seat, the scrape of my chair silencing a few conversations. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady when I said, Since we're all gathered here, I want to take a moment to share something important. Brandon looked startled, then amused. A toast? He asked, lifting his glass. Not exactly, I replied. All eyes turned to me. I could feel their curiosity, the quiet hush of anticipation. My palms itched with nerves, but I steadied them by wrapping my fingers around the clutch that held my backup. I opened it and pulled out the printed photographs. Crisp, glossy evidence. Melissa's laugh died instantly. These, I said, holding the photos high so everyone could see, were taken at the beach house. The same one Brandon told me was too far to visit. The same house Melissa swore she had never stepped inside. Gasps rippled through the room. Guests craned their necks, squinting at the pictures. Brandon's arm slid away from Melissa's shoulder, his face paling. This is Brandon, I continued, my voice sharp as glass. And this is Melissa. Not my trusted best friend. Not the loyal partner I thought I had. But two liars who built their secret life behind my back. Claire rose beside me, handing out copies she had stashed in her purse. Every table now held evidence. Guests whispered, brows furrowed. Heads shaking in disbelief. Brandon shot to his feet, his voice booming. This is ridiculous. Those pictures are out of context. Alissa is twisting everything. Really? I cut him off, my voice slicing through the noise. Then explain the dates stamped on the bottom. Explain why you told me you were working late on those exact nights. Explain why Melissa, my so-called sister in spirit, texted me lies while she was there with you. I pulled out my phone, opening the folder Claire had organized. With a few taps, the audio recording began to play, Brandon's voice low but unmistakable saying, "No one will ever know. She's too naive to suspect." The room froze. Melissa went white as chalk. Brandon's jaw fell slack. His attempt at denial withered in the face of his own words echoing across the restaurant. Gasps became murmurs, murmurs became outrage. One guest muttered, "Unbelievable." Another whispered, "And they acted like nothing was wrong." I let the silence linger just long enough before speaking again. I may have been naive once, but not anymore. Tonight I am done with lies, done with betrayal, and done with both of you. Melissa stammered, "Alissa, please, I can explain." But I raised my hand. "No, you already explained with your actions." Brandon's face twisted with rage. He reached for the photos, but Claire stepped in front of him, her posture unyielding. "Don't," she warned. And then in the moment when his mask fully cracked, Brandon shouted, "Fine. Yes, it's true. But you drove me to it. You and your endless expectations, you're constant." The words hung there, ugly, bitter. Every guest in the room recoiled. His confession wasn't just an accident. It was a weapon turned against him. I straightened, my voice calm, measured. "No, Brandon. You drove yourself to this. And now everyone sees you for who you really are." The restaurant was silent except for the sound of his labored breathing and Melissa's muffled sobs. The projector might have failed me. But in the end, the truth didn't need wires or screens. It only needed courage. And tonight, courage had finally spoken. The moment Brandon's words tore through the restaurant, silence stretched like a heavy curtain. His voice still seemed to echo, bouncing off the walls, even though the room had gone still. For one heartbeat, nobody moved. Then the whispers began, low, sharp, slicing through the air like knives. At the corner table, someone muttered, "How could he say that to her?" Another voice rose, "And with her best friend? Shameless." Heads shook. Forks clinked against plates, and the once bright laughter of the evening was replaced with murmurs of disbelief and disgust. Melissa's tears slid down her cheeks as she tried to grab Brandon's arm. "Brandon, say something," she begged in a frantic whisper. But he yanked his hand away, his expression hard and wild, like an animal trapped in a cage. "You set me up, Alissa," he spat, his voice breaking under the weight of fury and humiliation. "You wanted to humiliate me, well, congratulations. You got what you wanted." I didn't flinch. My voice came out steady, firm, even though my hands trembled at my sides. "No, Brandon. I didn't create this. You did. I simply revealed it." The restaurant's manager lingered nearby, torn between stepping in and letting the drama unfold. Guests stared with wide eyes, clutching their glasses, some even leaning forward to catch every word. It wasn't just dinner anymore. It was a public reckoning. Melissa collapsed back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with sobs, but nobody moved to comfort her. The sympathy she had once commanded as my best friend had evaporated. The other women in the room glanced at her with narrowed eyes, and a few whispered to each other, "A best friend doesn't do that." Claire stood taller beside me, her chin lifted, her gaze sweeping the room as if to say, "See? We told the truth." Her quiet strength gave me fuel. Then an older man, one of Brandon's business associates, stood up from his table. His voice rang out, deep and disappointed. "Brandon, I vouched for you. I told everyone here that you were reliable, that your word meant something. And now this. How do you expect anyone to trust you again?" Brandon's face reddened. He sputtered, but no words came. His jaw clenched, his fists balled tight. But the more he tried to summon control, the more it slipped through his fingers. The murmurs turned into small bursts of commentary. "He's ruined. She's stronger than I ever imagined. Good for her." For the first time that night, I allowed myself a small, quiet breath of relief. This wasn't just about exposing him. It was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity, my truth in front of everyone who had doubted me. Brandon slammed his fist against the table, rattling glasses. "Enough," he roared. But his voice no longer commanded the room. Instead of fear, his outburst drew scoffs and rolled eyes. One woman whispered just loud enough for others to hear. "Pathetic." Melissa tried again, her voice shaky. "Alissa, I never meant for it to go this far." I turned to her, my voice cold. "You meant for it to go far enough, Melissa. Far enough to destroy trust. Far enough to destroy friendship. And you succeeded. But only in destroying yourself." She sobbed harder, but I didn't move closer. This wasn't my burden to ease anymore. Then came the final blow, not from me but from the people around us. Guests began gathering their things, shaking their heads as they left, their disgust clear. Brandon had wanted a crowd to admire him tonight, to watch him bask in the glow of charm and confidence. Instead, they became his jury, and they were delivering their silent verdict with every step toward the exit. One by one, the tables emptied until only a handful of witnesses remained. People who couldn't look away, people who wanted to see the bitter end. I stood tall, holding my ground, my eyes locked on Brandon's. "You said I was too naive to suspect. You called me jealous. You thought I would stay silent. But tonight you learned the truth. Silence is not my strength. Courage is." The last word lingered in the air, heavy and final. Brandon sank into his chair, defeated, staring down at the floor as if answers might be written there. Melissa's sobs filled the emptying room. The fallout wasn't explosive anymore. It was quiet, crushing, undeniable. The kind of truth that couldn't be spun, denied, or erased. And I knew deep in my bones that the night was no longer his. It was mine. The morning after the storm felt almost unreal. The night's chaos replayed in my head in flashes. The gasps, the whispers, the way Brandon's face crumpled under the weight of exposure. But when I woke up, sunlight streaming across my bedroom floor, I realized something important. The world had shifted. And I had shifted with it. My phone buzzed constantly, notifications spilling across the screen like a flood I couldn't stop. Messages from coworkers, neighbors, even acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. "Alissa, I can't believe what he did. You were so brave. I was at the restaurant. You showed more strength than anyone I know. He embarrassed himself, not you." I scrolled, my chest tightening. Some messages made me cry, others made me laugh. For so long, I'd thought I was alone in my suspicion, in my pain. But now, people finally saw the truth. They weren't whispering about me. They were whispering about him. Meanwhile, Brandon's silence was louder than anything he could have said. His social media, once bursting with curated photos of our perfect life, was dark. His friends unfollowed him in droves. One of his business partners sent me a short, clipped email. "We're withdrawing from our contract. We can't afford the association." It hit me then, his reputation, the thing he prized above all else, was unraveling thread by thread. He hadn't just lost me. He was losing the very image he'd built his life around. Melissa, on the other hand, didn't have silence. She had noise. Angry comments flooded her posts. Friends distanced themselves, and whispers followed her everywhere. The best friend who betrayed. The woman who smiled while stabbing behind the back. She had wanted Brandon. She got him. But she also got the stain of being seen as someone no one could trust. By noon, I walked into town to clear my head. The air felt different, lighter somehow, though maybe that was just me. A woman I barely knew stopped me outside the cafe. She touched my arm gently. "You did what many of us only dream of, speaking the truth out loud." Her words warmed me, but they also reminded me of the responsibility I now carried. I hadn't just ended a betrayal. I had lit a torch for others to see. Later that day, Brandon finally reached out. His number flashed on my screen, but I didn't pick up. Instead, he left a voicemail. His voice cracked, almost pleading. "Alissa, please, you don't understand. Melissa meant nothing." I panicked. "I need you to help me fix this. People are turning against me." I sat listening, my hands steady. For once, his desperation didn't move me. His words felt like dust, hollow, weightless. He didn't want me. He wanted the life I gave him, the shield of my loyalty, the credibility my love had provided. That shield was gone. That night, as I sat with Claire over takeout cartons spread across the table, she raised a glass of wine. To you, Alissa. To survival, to truth, and to the fact that he finally knows what losing you feels like. I clinked my glass against hers, a smile tugging at my lips. But I couldn't help thinking beyond that moment. I thought of the people who had watched me stand tall. I thought of the whispers turning into respect. And I thought of Brandon, alone in his silence, finally tasting the emptiness he had tried to hand to me. The day after wasn't about revenge alone. It was about rebirth. Still deep down, I knew this story wasn't over until I sealed it myself. Until I closed the chapter not with whispers, but with my own words loud and clear, for the world to hear. And I was ready. When the dust truly settled, I stood in the center of my life with new eyes. For so long I had been defined by what Brandon wanted me to be, by what Melissa pretended to be, by what people assumed when they looked at us smiling in photos. But after everything unraveled, I realized something vital. I was no longer someone's accessory. I was no longer someone's safety net. I was my own foundation. The following weeks tested that foundation. Brandon tried again and again to pull me back. Flowers left at my door. Letters slipped into my mailbox. Messages through mutual friends, each one dripping with nostalgia, regret, and promises he could never keep. Melissa, meanwhile, tried silence. She vanished from town events, skipped gatherings, and wore sunglasses in places she never had before, as if hiding her face could erase her choices. But every time I looked at them, whether through their actions or the ripple effects of their downfall, I felt stronger. Their lies had once been my prison. Now their consequences were my freedom. I didn't rebuild overnight. Healing came in small steps. Making coffee in the morning without wondering if he'd criticize it. Walking into the grocery store without feeling stares of pity. Answering messages from people who had always admired me but never knew how to say it. Even my laughter changed. It was fuller, unchained, no longer guarded by the fear of being called too much. One afternoon, I met a lawyer to finalize the sale of the house Brandon had once sworn we would grow old in. I signed the last document with steady hands, knowing the home that had held so many lies would now hold none of me. When the pen left the paper, I felt something inside me settle. Closure wasn't just a word. It was a signature. Looking back, I know some will call what I did revenge. Maybe they are right. But to me it was survival dressed as justice. It was choosing not to let betrayal rot my spirit. It was saying, you do not get the final word in my life. And if you are listening to me now, if you have ever been silenced, dismissed, or betrayed by someone who was supposed to love you, hear me clearly. Your truth matters. Your voice matters. You do not need to scream to be powerful. You only need to stand in your truth and refuse to bend when someone tries to break you. Brandon thought he could laugh behind my back. Melissa thought she could smile in my face while stabbing me with her silence. But the ending belonged to me. I wrote it. I lived it. And now I tell it. So here I am, closing this chapter with my head high. Not as the woman betrayed, but as the woman who turned betrayal into a stage where truth had the loudest voice. And if you have stayed with me until now, ask yourself this. What story do you need to rewrite? What silence do you need to break? Because revenge is not always about destroying someone else. Sometimes it is about rebuilding yourself so brightly that their shadow disappears. Thank you for listening to my story. If it struck a chord, if it made you think of your own strength, then don't leave just yet. Subscribe for more stories like mine. Stories where pain becomes power, where betrayal becomes clarity, and where voices like ours are never silenced again. Because in the end, lies can only live in the dark. And we live in the light.